President. Mr. Vice President, I'm very happy to contribute to this bill to amend the Evidence Act 2020. And I want to say from the outset, I continue to protest over the suppression of my rights to speak for my full 40 minutes because of the PNM's decision to use its majority to accomplish that objective. But time is longer than twine. Madam President, this is what I would like to describe as a snake oil piece of legislation. It represents a concoction of questionable and deceptive clauses where deliberate attempts are made to weaken what I described as the guardrails of our democracy. And Madam President, I will show where the government is seeking to place greater legislative making power in the hands of members of the executive at the expense of the parliament. I want to say, Madam President, democracy dies not with a big bang, but it dies slowly, steadily, and sometimes imperceptibly. The amendments being proposed are very wide and far-reaching and even sweeping, and could constitute a very fundamental change in the culture of criminal investigations within our country. Suspect identification procedures, confession statements, and the mood of examining witnesses, all of which are matters that are being altered by this bill, go to the very root of the criminal justice system and investigative procedures. Madam President, there is no mitigating the fact that there is an abysmal crime detection rate in Trinidad and Tobago, an equally abysmal conviction rate. Citizens have become all too familiar with serious crimes being perpetrated by their loved ones. And when those perpetrators are caught and prosecuted, these criminals are still able to escape the clutches of justice because of some technicality. So we understand this. However, it may be desirable, Madam President, for the government to introduce legislation in order to regulate these critical procedures. And this government, along with the Attorney General, as usual, seems somewhat hell-bent on decimating, reducing, eroding, and subverting constitutional rights.
Senator Mark, I will ask you to withdraw that statement. It is improper.
Madam President, it is my view, but if you are guiding me to withdraw it, it is an opinion that I'm entitled to express, but I'm guided by you. I withdraw. And I raise this point in the context, Madam President, of our parliament being relegated to a role that is not envisaged in our constitution. This bill seeks to entrust regulation-making power in the hands of the executive without ensuring any form of parliamentary scrutiny or oversight. Madam President, this is dangerous. For example, the bill seeks or speaks of an approved form. This form is not a mere administrative form, such as a form used to make an application for a license or a passport. This form will be a statutory instrument which is being introduced as a safeguard to citizens when undergoing identification procedures. Madam President, in other words, the record-keeping function of these forms contribute to the overall fairness of the identification procedure and may become a critical piece of contemporaneous evidence at a trial. In this regard, Madam President, I ask, why should that form be created and approved by the Commissioner of Police? The police are about detecting crimes and obtaining convictions. And quite frankly, the police have little or no interest in creating a document that will preserve the interests of a suspect. Madam President, it is our position that this form must be approved by the Parliament, not by the police commissioner. And this is important to ensure overall fairness. And it will also bring parliamentary scrutiny to bear on this exercise. Parliament should and must have oversight of that form, not the police commissioner. Madam President, another instance where this legislation is disrespecting our Parliament deals with a provision or a clause that relegates again the importance of parliamentary scrutiny and oversight as it deals with the issue of regulations for the use and admission of CCTV evidence. This time, Madam President, instead of these regulations being laid in Parliament, the Attorney General has entrusted in the legislation this function to a triumvirate of persons. The Director of Public Prosecutions, with the greatest respect, the Minister of National Security, and the Commissioner of Police. Those three persons will make regulations. Madam President, I am wondering if these are the same regulations that we got yesterday evening at 3:04 p.m. It is draft regulations that we have received. But what is the significance and or importance of these regulations? You tell us these are draft. But Madam President, what is the role of the Parliament in looking at these draft regulations when the legislation does not give the Parliament the overall responsibility of approving these regulations that have been circulated? Because nowhere in the legislation are these regulations subject to an affirmative resolution of the Parliament. So I can only assume, Madam President, that the regulations that we have before us that have been circulated is consistent with this draconian measure that we have in the legislation, dealing with evidence, Madam President, and putting evidence in the hands of members of the executive. So the executive, Madam President, will be responsible for formulating what we have before us in the Parliament today. Madam President, we reject that completely. This must be withdrawn. And if it is to remain, it must be subject to an affirmative resolution of the both houses of Parliament. Madam President, if these were just administrative matters, that may have some degree of acceptability. But Madam President, the provision that is in the legislation also include what is called wide sweeping power, which allows the DPP, the Minister of National Security, and the Commissioner of Police to make regulations for, and I quote, Madam President, in accordance with the law that is before us, the bill that we are debating, such other matters as are necessary or expedient for giving effect to this part. So, Madam President, what is this Parliament really in existence for? Just to rubber stamp legislation and to give to the executive the power to make regulations? And we have no role after those regulations have been made. We will see a legal notice somewhere outlining those regulations. Madam President, I must remind this honorable House, this is how democracies begin to die. When the Parliament that is supposed to be the bastion of democracy is undermined, and when the executive arrogate unto itself, as we have seen in this piece of legislation, power of legislative or lawmaking. That is wrong. That must be rejected, Madam President. Madam President, the Attorney General is given, as I said, the DPP, and these other persons, all of whom are prosecution-oriented. Where's this balance, Madam President? You are giving people who are prosecution-oriented to make regulations for matters concerning the regulation and admission of CCTV footage evidence. Madam President, where is the balance? Where is the proportionality? Who is seeking the interest of the ordinary citizen in our country? This bill, several provisions of it, is what can simply be described as a prosecution paradise. This is in favor of the prosecution. And in our Constitution, there is a section called Section 5. Section 5(2)(f), which talks about a fair trial, Madam President, by an independent tribunal. But if you have, Madam President, from the outset, this matter being skewed in favor of the prosecution, then we are in trouble as a republic and as a democracy. Madam President, I emphasize the importance of looking at the role of our Parliament in terms of scrutiny and oversight. That those functions are very critical, Madam President. We cannot continue along the path of giving members of the executive, Madam President, that kind of lawmaking power. At the end of the day, if we do this, Madam President, we will not have
Senator Mark, you have 5 more minutes.
Thank you, Madam President. Democratic legitimacy, Madam President. Madam President, it is clear that when we look at the legislation, there are many weaknesses in the legislation. I want to also point out to you, Madam President, there is a section of this legislation which again, Madam President, gives power to the executive to make regulations. Madam President, that is unheard of. We cannot give the executive the power to make regulations that will deal with people's fundamental rights and liberties. This must be either subject, Madam President, to an affirmative resolution or it must be removed. Madam President, when we go to the legislation, I want to take you briefly on this journey where we focus on electronic communication, electronic record, information, and data information, as well as information systems. There is a section, Madam President, that I need to bring to your attention and to try to get some clarification. We are seeing, Madam President, in clause 6 of the legislation, and if we go to what is called section 14B 1 and 2, we are talking about a device or process is one that is of a kind that ordinarily produces or accurately communicates an electronic record. And it goes on to talk, Madam President, of the court shall presume that in producing or communicating that electronic record on the occasion in question, the device or process produced or accurately communicated the electronic record, and it goes on to indicate how and why. I would like to ask the Honorable Senate at this time, and I'd like to ask the Attorney General in particular, when it comes to Section 4 of the same clause 6, it deals with the following concepts that are very vague and very difficult to interpret because there's no definition for the interpretation of these concepts. So, Madam President, in Section 5 or Clause 6 of subsection 5, it reads, where it is intended to prove the authenticity of an electronic record as evidence, it is permissible to have the evidence of the expert relating to the authenticity of the electronic record. Nowhere are we told what and who is an expert. We don't know the definition of the expert. It goes on in subsection 6 to say that the certificate presented by this expert would have to be, well, no, the certificate under this section shall be prepared by 1, a person occupying a responsible position in relation to the operation or management or a specified security procedure provider. Madam President, what is a specified security procedure provider? I don't know. There's no definition. Or a security procedure provider. What is that? We need clarification and definition. And then we talk about an expert appointed or accepted by the court. Again, Madam President, no definition for guidance. it is vague, Madam President, and that is dangerous in this kind of legislation. Madam President, I know that my time is up.
Yes.
I want to thank you for the opportunity for making this brief contribution. Thank you so very much.
Senator Welch.